6 days ago, June 24th, 2026. It was a national holiday in Venezuela. People were home with their families, children were outside playing. At 6:04 p.m., the ground moved. A magnitude 7.2 earthquake, followed 39 seconds later by a 7.5. Two massive earthquakes, back to back, less than a minute apart. At least 920 people confirmed dead. Over 50,000 still unaccounted for. Now, most news coverage will tell you what happened, but almost nobody is asking the more important question. Why does this keep happening? Not just Venezuela, Chile, Japan, Indonesia, Alaska, different countries, different decades, different centuries. The same thing, over and over. There's a reason for that. And it connects Venezuela to a 40,000-kilometer ring of fire, pressure, and geological violence that wraps around the entire Pacific Ocean. It's called the Ring of Fire. Venezuela isn't inside it. But what happened there 6 days ago is part of the exact same story. A story about tectonic plates that have been moving for hundreds of millions of years, and a planet that doesn't care that we built our cities on top of them. Picture the Pacific Ocean. Now trace its edges. The western coast of South America, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, up through Central America, Mexico, the western coast of the United States and Canada, across Alaska and the Aleutian Islands, down through Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, a horseshoe-shaped arc 40,000 kilometers long, wrapping almost entirely around the largest ocean on Earth. This is the Ring of Fire. And these numbers are almost impossible to believe. 90% of the world's earthquakes happen here. 81% of the world's largest earthquakes happen here. 75% of the world's active volcanoes here. Over 850 active volcanoes. Dozens of active fault lines. Multiple tectonic plates in constant, grinding motion. But it's not actually a single ring. It's not even a single geological feature. It's the combined result of multiple tectonic plates, all converging, colliding, and sliding against each other, along the edges of the Pacific Ocean. And to understand why, you need to understand three things: the Earth's core, the mantle, and subduction zones. The Earth is not a solid rock. Inside, it's more like a machine. At the center, Tamora Dashah, an inner core of solid iron and nickel. Around it, a liquid outer core. Then a thick layer of partially molten rock called the mantle. And on top of all that left the thin, brittle crust we live on. That crust is not one piece. It's broken into about 15 major sections called tectonic plates, floating on the mantle below like cracked pieces of eggshell on top of a very slowly churning liquid. The mantle isn't still either. Intense heat from the core, reaching over 5,000 degrees Celsius, creates convection currents deep within the mantle. Hot rock rises, cools, sinks, rises again. This slow, constant circulation is what moves the tectonic plates above it, millimeters per year, sometimes centimeters, but constantly, relentlessly, without stopping. And where plates meet, things get violent. When two plates collide along the Ring of Fire, something remarkable happens. The heavier oceanic plate, dense, cold, old rock, gets forced down beneath the lighter continental plate. This is called subduction. As the oceanic plate sinks deeper into the mantle, the pressure and heat become enormous. The rock melts, generates magma. That magma finds cracks and rises, erupting on the surface as a volcano. And as the two plates scrape and grind against each other during this process, that friction creates earthquakes. The plates don't slide smoothly. They lock. Build up stress, lock again, until the pressure becomes too great and releases all at once. That release, in a fraction of a second, is an earthquake. The Ring of Fire is where this process happens at the most extreme scale anywhere on Earth. Let's look at what the Ring of Fire has done. Not as a geological concept, as a force that has shaped human history. Chile, May 22nd, 1960. At 3:11 p.m., the Nazca Plate released stress that had been building for decades. The rupture stretched over 1,000 kilometers. It lasted 10 full minutes, magnitude 9.5, the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in human history. The tsunami it generated traveled across the entire Pacific Ocean. 15 hours later, it hit Hawaii, killing 61 people. 22 hours after the earthquake, it reached Japan, killing 142, one earthquake in Chile, killing people 10,000 miles away. Indian Ocean, December 26, 2004, a magnitude 9.1 earthquake off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. The tsunami that followed traveled at the speed of a jet aircraft. It reached 14 countries. It killed 227,898 people, the deadliest tsunami in recorded human history. In some coastal villages, there was no warning, no time to run. The water arrived before the sound of anything. Japan, March 11, 2011. Magnitude 9.1, the most powerful earthquake in Japan's recorded history. Japan has the best earthquake infrastructure in the world. Its buildings withstood the shaking, but the tsunami that followed, with waves reaching over 40 meters in some locations, overwhelmed everything. Nearly 19,759 people died. Entire coastal towns were erased from the map. And the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, hit by the tsunami, suffered the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. One earthquake, 3 catastrophes, the shaking, the tsunami, the nuclear meltdown, and now Venezuela, June 24, 2026. Not in the Ring of Fire, but on the boundary between the Caribbean plate and the South American plate, a boundary that has ruptured before in 1641, in 1766, in 1812, in 1900. This system has always been active. It was always going to move again. 920 dead, 50,000 missing. The strongest earthquake Venezuela has experienced in over 120 years. And aftershocks continue, as of today. Here is something most people don't realize. The civilizations that built the greatest ancient monuments in history, the Aztecs, the Maya, the Inca, the ancient Japanese, the people of coastal Indonesia, they didn't just happen to live near the Ring of Fire, they built their entire worlds on it. Fertile volcanic soil, rich coastlines, deep harbors. The same volcanic activity that destroys also creates some of the most productive land on Earth. But they also lived with the consequences. Stanford geophysicist Amos Noor spent decades documenting how earthquakes shaped and ended ancient civilizations. His research found evidence that major seismic events contributed to the collapse of multiple Bronze Age civilizations around 1200 BCE. The ancient Japanese developed entire mythologies around earthquakes. The giant catfish Namazu believed to cause tremors, not superstition, a culture built around living on the most seismically active island chain on Earth. The Inca built their massive stone structures at Machu Picchu using stones cut so precisely they fit together without mortar. This wasn't just aesthetics, it was earthquake engineering. The stones could shift during a tremor and fall back into place. Ancient humans didn't need seismographs to understand the ground was alive. They built their entire civilizations around that fact. Here is the scenario that Earth scientists talk about: the Cascadia subduction zone. It runs along the coast of the Pacific Northwest, from Northern California through Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia in Canada. It is geologically virtually identical to the subduction zone that caused the 2011 Japan earthquake. The last major rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone was January 26, 1700. A magnitude 9 earthquake so powerful it sent a tsunami all the way to Japan. That was 325 years ago. These zones typically rupture every 200 to 500 years. The cities of Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver, with a combined metropolitan population of over 10 million people, sit directly in the projected impact zone. A 2015 study by geologist Catherine Schultz described what scientists call the really big one, a full Cascadia rupture that could kill over 13,000 people, displace over 1 million, and cause damage that would take decades to recover from. FEMA has modeled the scenario. Emergency management agencies have run drills. But much of the existing infrastructure, bridges, hospitals, schools, was built before the full danger was understood. This is not speculation. This is documented, peer-reviewed, consensus science. The question is not if. The question is when. Here is the truth that geology keeps telling us, and that we keep finding difficult to hear. We did not build civilization on stable ground. We built it on tectonic plates, moving, grinding, colliding plates that have been doing exactly this for hundreds of millions of years. Long before the first human being walked upright, the Pacific plate was being subducted. The magma was rising. The earthquakes were happening. We arrived here very recently. We built our cities over fault lines because the soil was fertile, the harbors were deep, and the land was beautiful. And when the earth moves, as it has always moved, it is not punishing us. It is not aware of us. It is simply continuing a process that began long before we existed and will continue long after we're gone. The ground beneath your feet right now is moving, not fast enough to feel, but moving, centimeters per year, building stress, storing energy, waiting. The ring of fire is not a threat. It's not a warning. It's just the planet, doing what it does. And we, with our cities, our bridges, our hospitals, we are the ones who chose to build our entire civilization on top of it. That doesn't make us foolish. It makes us exactly what we have always been. Temporary passengers on a restless, indifferent, magnificent planet that was never ours to own. We just get to live on it for a while.